Are you looking for a fun way to win up to 25 times your money this football and basketball season? Test your skills on Prize Picks, the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Just select two or more players, pick more or less on their projections for a wide variety of stats, and place your entry. It's as easy as that. If you have the skills, you can turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. Easy gameplay, quick withdrawals, and injury insurance on your picks are what makes Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Ready to test your skills? Join the PrizePicks community of more than 7 million players who have already signed up. Right now, PrizePicks will match your first deposit up to $100. Just visit prizepicks.com/bluewire and use code BLUEWIRE. That's code BLUEWIRE at prizepicks.com/bluewire for a first deposit match of up to $100. PrizePicks, daily fantasy sports made easy.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Pod Mavericks After Dark. What is it? It's Tuesday, September 5th. Wow, September. It's about 9 o'clock. I'm joined, as always, by my co-host and co-editor over at Mavs Moneyball, Josh Bowe. How you doing, Josh?
I'm doing good. September. Ooh, when did that happen?
I don't know.
August felt like the longest month in the world, and then all of a sudden it's September. It's weird.
Not only was like August the longest month in the world, then I got that cool electric bill for the month of August. July was something like the average temperature was it was just preposterous. I'm looking forward to fall. I will complain about the cold. Our fellow editor over at Mavs Moneyball, Doyle Rader, noted that the Farmer's Almanac indicates that there's a pretty dang good chance it's going to be an extra cold winter, which would be just perfect. Well, of course, we're leading the podcast with some weather talk because in Mavs land, there's not a ton going on. I wanted to talk a little bit more about the World Cup because I am just having an absolute great time with it. So to kind of recap, the next 2 days of group play were pretty wild, where there were some upsets. Canada nearly got knocked out and sent home. They lost to Brazil. And then they rallied back to beat Spain, which if they didn't win that game, they were going home because this is basically now there's 8 teams left. The United States was beat on Saturday, and not just kind of beat, like they were whooped. They were out executed. They were outshot, which was something that happens in tournaments like these. But it was a very strong wake up call that the United States team needs to rebound. Shout out Jaren Jackson Jr., who they played today and they won against Italy. But in the last 2 games of group play, he grabbed 1 rebound in 2 games. I remember Chuck Cooperstein when he was coming out of college. Chuck Cooperstein was arguing with me about how the man has a foul trouble problem. And that was 5 years ago. He has not corrected the foul trouble problem at all. He makes the dumbest fouls, and it absolutely should drive Steve Kerr insane because he's the one true big on the team that they'll actually play. They never give the Utah guy any burn, I think, just for foot speed issues, but that is what it is. And then Slovenia played Germany. Now, they didn't have to win. Would have been nice. Luka came out in the first quarter and basically big boyed whoever guarded him, then got hit on the thigh again and just didn't look the same. And Germany flat out ran Slovenia off the floor, just out muscled them. Germany's one of the most talented teams in the tournament, at least in terms of by professional league standards. They have all sorts of guys that play in the NBA. So that one's not exactly surprising. And considering Slovenia didn't need to win, it's one where it's like, okay, let's see where we go.
Yeah, and they just beaten Australia too, so they weren't gonna. They were, you're gonna drop one eventually here.
So they match up tomorrow morning. So, but depending on when you listen to this, the game might already be over. 7:30 on ESPN2. So you might be able to watch this, Josh.
Hooray.
At least when you get home from daycare drop off.
Mhm.
So it's the second half, and they have all these guys that can guard Luka. They have Shai, who really can't guard Luka, but they'll probably try him. Dylan Brooks, who's our other man from Oklahoma City, the bulky like linebacker looking gentleman. What's wrong?
From Oklahoma City?
Yeah.
The other Jalen Williams, or no?
No. Lugan's Dort. Lou Dort.
Oh, Dort. That's right.
Yeah, Dort's. They're the when you go through and figure out who's Canadian, it's pretty amazing. The second best Slovenian player tomorrow, in my opinion, is going to be RJ. And that's just that's the way that'll go. But we'll probably have more to talk about that game, because if they win this game,
is that a knockout game? Is that a winner moves
it is
on?
a knockout game. It is a knockout game. Now, before I continue on about the Slovenian team and really some extra thoughts that I had based on interactions I had on social media, I wanted to point out a story. There was on the Hoop Collective podcast. I'm a little behind on my basketball stuff because I'm listening to all football things. Well, Brian Windhorst, it just kind of auto played, and I was listening to it. And Brian Windhorst started talking about the South Sudan team, which has qualified for the Olympics next year. And do you realize that only 12 teams actually qualify for the Olympics? Like, we take this for granted because when it comes to seedings, the American team basically is one of the only ones that's always there. Like, I don't think the American team has ever missed the Olympics. I could be wrong. But it's really difficult outside, because these tournaments are dominated by the United States and European teams, with everybody else pretty much getting scraps. So and that includes, all African teams, some of the Asian teams. Australia tends to win a lot of those tournaments, but South Sudan, and I don't remember the exact path on how South Sudan qualified for the tournament, but you read this story, and they've only been a legal like a country recognized by the world since 2012 or 2011. So we're talking 12, and then during that time they've had two sort of either like periods of unrest or civil war, and as recently as 2020 we're talking like they were still at war. So this is the first time as a country they've qualified for any sort of Olympic thing. And they did it as a basketball team without having access to indoor practice facilities. So go seek out this story on ESPN. Just type Brian Windhorst, South Sudan. It's one of the craziest, most incredible things I've read. And it, sort of reminded me on elements of why I really like this tournament, because it's, you see these guys play for their countries. It's pretty incredible. Here in the United States, when it comes to these tournaments, our players, they don't want their summer. Like, they want their summers. So getting them to play requires a particular level of commitment. It's tough because with the way they have these tournaments structured, and it's not going to change. I've looked into this. They have World Cup one summer and the Olympics the next summer. And FIBA basically wants to overtake the Olympics in terms of importance to basketball. And I'm just not sure. Like, the tournament is certainly a better format for it. Because like, once you get to the Olympics, there's only 12 teams. There's not a lot going on there. And then things are sort of over pretty quickly. And so I understand like why from a basketball standpoint, because this tournament has more teams. I mean, there are 32 teams that were invited to the World Cup tournament in group play, and then they whittle them down to 8, and then so on and so forth. And that is leading into all the other tournaments that are played throughout, the years before to get there. And so there's just all these chances for international basketball. And what that got me to thinking, because, I'm not going to sit here and lie. I never really watched Dirk and international basketball. I didn't have the access in the mid, in the early 2000s, and in the mid 2000s, I just didn't, certainly wasn't particularly interested. So I started asking a question that at least I thought was interesting. For the various Slovenian followers, what team and when was the best team that the Slovenian national team has played against that had real stakes? And what I meant by that was, like, they play all these international friendlies that are fun, but they're kind of like the warm-up games. They're not games that like contribute towards a particular tournament. And what I found, just kind of by happenstance from the answers that I got, was I've ended up watching a fair number of these games, and really, and I'm let me know if you've actually seen any of these. So our buddy Iztok said that he thought that, Australia and Germany from this tournament were two of the best teams they've played against ever. And then he listed Lithuania, Germany and France at the last Eurobasket, and then Germany, Spain, France, and Australia at the Olympics. So it's like asking people to pick and choose with some of these teams is pretty tough, because one of the things I think that we keep kind of underselling, and I'm going to try to sell this properly, is that Slovenia is a country of 2 million people, and they're competing against much bigger countries every single time they take the floor. The one that really, the most impressive win that I remember seeing straight up was the Olympic qualification game. This had to be last year. Or was it last year? It was last time when they were in the Olympics, when they played Lithuania, and both Jonas Valanciunas and Sabonis were on that team, and the Slovenian team with Luka just wrecked. So we got some. There's just been some pretty incredible matches over the years, and that's where this like Canadian one for me, I'm really like, I'm gonna find a way to watch this one. I'm really I've only been catching like bits and pieces just because of, schedule and stuff and work, but I'm gonna see if I can like throw up out of office for like 90 minutes tomorrow morning and see if no one will bother me in the office. So yeah, just I was wanting to riff on that a little bit. I'm probably wrong on some particulars, and I apologize if I've stated anything incorrectly, but I've really enjoyed following the Slovenian team. They're very punchy. That one of the players, Meta retweeted this. It was like just talked about, and he was clearly like an older guy, like just talked about how long they've been away from their families at this point. And it's like to play these sorts of basketball tournaments. It really does. It's a big commitment, and it's really cool that these guys go and do that. I don't know. I'm thoroughly into it.
No, for sure. And this Slovenian team definitely has a different flavor than the Olympic team, that Eurobasket team, where they had Goran Dragic, and they kind of those teams really did have a lot of talent. This team is much more much scrappier.
Well, they've had sustained the two big injuries.
No Goran, and then Kankar got hurt right before the World Cup started. Like
another player got hurt, tore his ACL, also before the tournament. They knew that going in, but it's just tough.
Yeah.
So
the fact that they've been able to put on this run, like beating Australia, and there's it'll be interesting to see how they play tomorrow. But it's one of those things where I almost feel like the Olympics, because they didn't medal in the Olympics, right? I think they finished like 4th or 5th. I can't remember. There was like, even though like it would have been a huge, colossal achievement,
they got 4th. Like, they got beat by France.
There was a twinge of disappointment, I felt, that they didn't medal, because I think people thought that might have been like one of the best teams they've ever had, or they ever will have.
You just get
they're underdogs now.
You just get X number of chances to win. And that's kind of what it comes down to, where, and you think about it in terms of how long the Mavericks have had Luka Doncic. I mean, realistically, 5 years have gone by like that. And when you play in these overseas tournaments as well, you're always doing it in addition to all the other basketball that you get paid to play. So, a certain circumstance might take you out. That's why I think Mavericks fans, particularly like people that aren't really interested in this kind of overseas basketball, and I've seen comments, like people get really frustrated that Luka's playing in these things. And I'm just and they did with Dirk too. But it's like, I
mean, Cuban didn't like it. Wasn't Cuban pretty outspoken when Dirk was playing?
Yeah, and he kind of had to take his medicine on that, because it's like, this is not something you're going to convince these guys of. Yeah. And I understand if you are, as an American citizen, don't feel particularly patriotic. Okay, that's not. But for a lot of these countries, and I've just had discussions the past several weeks, when you're playing against incredible odds. I mean, we have something. The United States has like 360 million citizens. We have 180 times the population of Slovenia. And we might play them for a bet. So it's like these sorts of things just they matter. They matter to people. And there's times where it's like, people kind of forget why international competitions were like created. Like they were created as a means, like as an alternative, so people from different countries could get together and compete in a non-violent way. Like it's, I don't know. I could kind of ramble about this stuff for a while. I would love to go see an overseas game and just feel like my friend Adam Mares went to the Serbia-Greece friendly last year. And he's like, that might be the best basketball experience I've ever had, in terms of that sort of stuff. So, all right. So before we pivot to what we're going to talk about next, and just so everyone knows, Josh and I are inching closer and closer to the point in the offseason calendar where we do have to address stuff for the sake of content, like Stephen A. Smith saying today that he thinks Jason Tatum is better than Luka. We're getting there, but it's not today.
Thank you. God, I didn't even know that happened. I was not really online today, so
it did.
I
was reading through the replies of one of the people who asked us a question who I had muted, and that was a discussion point today. And it's just like, okay, like
training camp's coming up, man. It'll save us soon.
That's perfect. That's absolutely perfect. Okay, so to bring us back, I want to do we're going to do a live read here because for the second time in a month, I wanted to tell you guys a little bit about NBA 2K Mobile. I've been playing it more than I should have. My cell phone does not have the battery to deal with things like this these days, and thank goodness I work from home.
Are you playing it more than the required amount that you need to do an ad read?
Yes.
Okay.
It's really fun. The graphics are shockingly good. The gameplay is interesting to where there's like a variety of things you can do to build up your team, your my player. There's a lot of customization. I've not done anything where I'm playing against anyone because that sort of stuff would be really bad for my confidence, because losing to like a 14-year-old on a mobile game does not sound fun to me. It's just not really my thing. But if you're listening to a basketball podcast in the dead of off season, you kind of owe it to yourself to try this game. They're always updating things. They're adding new opportunities to get, cards and collectibles and things like that. It's just a lot of fun. I really do recommend trying it. If you want to do it, go ahead and download the NBA 2K mobile game free on the App Store or Google Play, and use my promo code, which is Tatum2K Mobile, to redeem an exclusive Jason Tatum Pearl tier card.
Okay, that's funny.
Right, no, right.
Wait a minute.
That code is TATUM2KMOBILE. All right.
What's going on there?
It's pretty perfect. Even my dog disagrees with the notion of having a Jason Tatum based thing.
That's amazing.
I will say, so yeah. All right. So I'm gonna kick it to a real break for our podcast listeners. Again, guys, if you actually don't skip through those sort of things really help us out. So if you could go ahead and do that, I would appreciate it. We'll be back in just a second.
We're driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging, so you can connect with candidates faster. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. One of the things I love about Indeed is it makes hiring all in one place so easy and streamlined, so I can spend more time on the rest of my business. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences. So the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Just go to Indeed.com/Blue Wire right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
Apple Card is the credit card created by Apple. You earn 3% daily cash back up front when you use it to buy a new iPhone 15, AirPods, or any products at Apple. And you can automatically grow your daily cash at 4.15% annual percentage yield when you open a high-yield savings account. Apply for Apple Card in the Wallet app on iPhone. Apple Card subject to credit approval. Savings is available to Apple Card owners subject to eligibility. Savings accounts by Goldman Sachs Bank USA, member FDIC. Terms apply.
Okay, now that you've had a couple of minutes, I'm going to shill one more time, and I'm going to shill for our actual podcast. Again, we're inching towards the regular season. We're going to have 4 preseason games to cover, and I'm not sure what we'll do because 3 of those games are in the middle of the day. I don't know if we're actually going to be able to cover them, but during the regular season, you and I are talking to each other as much as we talk to our spouses. So we're on podcasts multiple times a week, and you should like this YouTube channel. You should like the stream, subscribe, and hit that bell to get notified whenever we go live. And we will continue to put out as much content as we can as handle, because I still like talking about this stuff. I can't believe it. I usually go through a period, and I did there are chunks of August where I'm like playing Diablo at 1 a.m, and I'm like, I could just do this. I don't need to do basketball stuff.
Right.
But then I realized I like talking to people. It's a social outlet. It's fun. And so I really, I was just been thinking about that a little bit.
August is the worst for sure. We're through the worst month. Like, things are only up from here.
2025 is going to be a disaster because I don't think there's any international basketball at that point. So it's like, what am I going to do? All right. So before the show, about 4 or 5 hours ago, I put out a call for some questions, and we're gonna go through these, and you've heard a lot from me tonight, and I apologize. We're gonna get to Josh more in a second, but the first one that I got, the very first one that I got, was from a Twitter handle with the name @PrimeDirk41. He is a notorious Luka hater, just unbelievable disdain for Luka on his timeline. Really makes me laugh. He asked me the very blunt question of, do you still hate Kyrie? And he shared with me my own tweet from February 3rd, which I think was before the trade deadline.
Yes, it was.
And I and anybody that's followed me on Twitter, like I tweet stuff. I don't care. Like, I don't tweet as much anymore just because the platform is kind of annoying me. But when basketball season comes around, I'll be back at it. I tweeted like I said, I've given it a lot of thought, and Kyrie Irving can go to hell. That might be up there with me asking if we could trade Jalen Brunson after a missed jumper, like sometime in January, in terms of like reactionary nonsense. It's a good question, because I'm not going to sit here and say that I love Kyrie Irving. I really appreciate Kyrie's game. It is as advertised. And I watched a lot of Kyrie Irving from 2011, 2012. And I went through the first LeBron year. And then after he was ended up on the Celtics, I've just not paid a ton of attention to his game. And it's held up. He is spectacular to watch. I am going to enjoy the Kyrie experience insofar as we have the Kyrie basketball experience. And I'm hopeful that nothing else, that we get just a pure Kyrie basketball experience. That's sort of where I settle on him. Is that fair?
Yeah, it is. And it's kind of weird with Kyrie because, like, I remember he wasn't like a favorite player, but like I always, whenever he was on national TV, which, for a while he was on national TV because LeBron was on his team, but still, watching those Cavs teams, they were so much fun to watch. I remember he points he had like 50, 53 or something in an overtime game on the road against Tim Duncan's Spurs team. And it was like, he barely went to the free throw line, I think. Like, it was all makes around the rim and contorting and flipping up these.
His game layups. Is like a YouTube video come to life.
It's really fun to watch. And really, like, even when he started to get like annoying, he was only annoying like at first in like the sports sense. Like, like the earth is flat stuff never really outraged me. It was just more like he's just being an idiot. But it never felt like harmful. And that's, the last couple of years, it felt like it kind of switched and it got a little harmful. And that's where it like became a bummer to be, to see him on your team or something like that. But, since he's been in Dallas, he's obviously been on his best behavior. He got the contract he wanted.
I think he likes the atmosphere in the sense of he's not under a LeBron, a Boston, or a New York pressure cooker. It is, if we're candid, basketball is a third tier sport in this town relative to football and to baseball.
Yeah, media-wise, he's in a perfect spot in terms of like being able to just kind of chill and not have to worry about people asking him stuff that he doesn't want to talk about.
I tease our friend over at Dallas Basketball, Grant Afseth, about this from time to time. Kyrie, if you think about him from the sense of he views basketball as a bit of an artistic outlet, Grant asks him questions that allow him to explain his art. And it's pretty remarkable. It's also pretty like, okay, there's a lot going on here. But that's the kind of stuff you can tell. That's the kind of stuff he would rather talk about if given the opportunity, under the right circumstances. And the Mavericks are going to be so interesting this year from a basketball sense that hopefully we'll get a lot of stuff like that, because he's the special sauce. We know what Luka gives us, and it can he Ben Golliver over he runs the Greatest of All Talk podcast had he talked about how well Luka and Kyrie and Luka's numbers were so great, but they still couldn't win. So that's why I don't think this pairing can work. And I'm just like, Jesus, Ben, they had nobody else. That's not Kyrie or Luka's fault. It was just, I don't know, that sort of stuff just frustrates me. But all that said, like, no, I don't think I hate Kyrie. I want the experience of watching him play basketball. If it can continue like it went last year, we're gonna have a great time. That's what I think.
And then there's always the ticking time bomb in the back of your head about like how he's ended every relationship with every team he's ever been on. That's the part where like, I don't know, like I just don't talk about it, because if you bring it up, you just get swarmed with, you're just being pessimistic hater. And it's like, well, I mean, that's what happened. Like, history is the history. So hopefully that stuff can kind of stay in the background for as long as possible.
That's right. All right, so I have another question, which I'm going to put out here, and then I hear my wife is out of town today, and I told my 7-year-old son, you need to go sleep, and you need to let me record a podcast. I can hear him calling for me, so I'm going to try to prompt you, and then see if you can if you can talk a little bit.
So I can filibuster a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. So Bailey Kale on Twitter asks, "Is Luka the face of the NBA yet? If he is, I feel like the NBA leaves him off a lot of promos. So what do you think? Do you think he's kind of one of the guys that they broadcast?" I'll be right back.
I mean, I think the NBA very clearly is investing in him. I mean, he's on national TV a bunch. He's been in all-star games. Like, I feel like the league is promoting him about as well as they should. Obviously, some fans are going to feel differently, like with Ja Morant. His ascension that he kind of got before all of his kind of public relations nightmares. But I don't know if he's not the face of the league, because no one's the face of the league. No one's the new face until LeBron retired. Like, it's LeBron until he's gone. And there's just nothing stopping that. Like, there's still – the NBA is in an interesting place, because there's still a lot of guys that were the face of the league in like 2008, 2009 that still play. LeBron, Kevin Durant, Chris Paul, although obviously he is not as magnified as he was a couple years ago. But like, as long as LeBron's here, he'll be the face. I think when LeBron retires, we'll maybe see we'll see something different. But I mean, absolutely the league is invested in Luka being like a guy to carry the torch going forward. I think anyone saying they're not doing that, it would be kind of silly. Did you get all that?
I did. You're the best. And everybody who's watching, I apologize for just like piecing out. This is the one thing about doing this sort of stuff as a side hustle is real life gives zero shits about like, if this were like Josh and I's job, and it'd be nice, but it doesn't pay enough. We have to deal with stuff like this every now and again. So I apologize for that, but I did pretty, I'm sure it was a verbose answer.
Thank you.
Bailey also asked another question, which I liked. And he said, will Lively and Omax get playoff minutes when the Mavs make the playoffs this year? So I don't think the Mavericks make the playoffs unless these two get minutes.
Right. That's what I was going to say. I was going to say it's kind of like, what do you call it? Chicken crossing the road or whatever. It's like,
chicken or the egg. What comes first?
Yeah, sorry. That's it. Thank you. You're right. Like, they're not going to, if they don't play, they probably, or if they don't contribute to winning basketball this year, then the Mavericks are kind of in a rock and a hard place. So yeah, I'm with you. they'll play because they're going to be a reason why they're in the playoffs.
I like that one. That's a good question. So, all right, let's see. What else do we have? Now, this is one I don't think we're going to be able to answer, but it's the kind of like weeds, super thoughtful, we're unbelievable basketball nerds kind of question. So,
is this the third two-way spot?
Yeah. At One for Dirk asks, who do y'all think gets the third two-way spot? Would it be better to go get a so-so starting center like Olenek or Valanciunas and give up? That's a separate question. Would it? All right. So the first question is, what do you think? Who do you think gets the third two-way spot? I think they give it to one of these camp invites because with that one guy goes sign in Europe, the shorter guard that played a lot of minutes for us last year. Of course, I just can't remember his
McKinley
name.
Wright.
Yeah, McKinley Wright says that opens up a contract. And they have like Greg Brown, I think is one of the names.
Yep. I've got some named Greg Brown.
Greg Brown's highlights are preposterous, by the way.
They really are.
It's
Joe
like
Wieskamp, another training camp name. Jordan Walker, who we knew, Jelly Walker. I'm trying to think of some other names we don't know.
Could be an interesting one just for for funsies.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think it's gonna be AJ Lawson and Mike Miles for two of them.
Yep.
And I could see Jordan Walker being the third, but I can't remember. I think he's is he on like an Exhibit 10 contract? I can't remember.
Yeah, and the way
There's
those things work. Yeah, Scott, CBA Mavs can normally explain this stuff, but it's like one of the nice parts about having Luka Doncic is ultimately not having to care, which is funny because I've railed for, the better part of 4 years about how they need to care about the back end of the bench.
Right.
I will say that I'm interested in them giving guys shots. Like there was one guy, it started with a T that was on the summer league team that played at the University of Houston, who was just an aerial nightmare. Like the man had all sorts of awesome dunks. It was like Taze, maybe.
Taze Moore.
Yeah, he was amazing. And it's just somebody asked, would he maybe get a two-way spot? I'm just like, I just can't see him doing it for a 25-year-old guy. Like I that kind of athleticism is so interesting, but it's just, is it functional within the NBA? I just don't know. Like I'm not good enough at this to be able to make that sort of assertion, but it's got to be one of these guys from training camp is where I'll be. Now, how they make that determination is weird because they're playing 3 games overseas. Are those guys going to get any minutes? That's curious to me.
Right, because those games are almost less about preparing for the season and putting on a show for the league in a way. So we'll see.
So then One for Dirk had another question. Would it be better to go get a so-so starting center like Kelly Olynyk or Jonas Valanciunas and give up less assets, thinking like second-round picks, Tim Hardaway Jr. or Holmes, or a hotter name but give up a first-round pick and then like Green or Hardy? I think I'd prefer the former.
Ding, 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 ding.
Yeah. It's me too.
I mean, if it's for center, yeah, like if they trade any of their top tier assets that they have right now for a starting center after taking Derek Lively 12th, that's a misuse. That's a misuse of assets for me. If they're going to trade those top tier assets, it needs to be for another wing, I think, because that's kind of the last spot that really needs to be filled. Because I know fans are going to cry, well, what about center? And it's like, okay, well, Lively's going to be that guy. You would hope like the next 10 years or so. Maybe he's not ready this year. And then, you've got Luka and then you've got Kyrie and you got Grant Williams. So there's technically maybe 4 of your 5 starting building blocks. And then the 5th piece needs to probably be another wing. So yeah, that's where I would put my assets if Josh Green doesn't turn out to be that guy.
When we had one, a guy who's been commenting on our stuff, really appreciate the comments. Vroom keeps noting that the Mavericks should go after like a Jared Allen. And then he lists like Clint Capella, Nick Claxton. I think to get those pieces, you have to give up that first round pick. And I like those pieces. I don't like them enough to where that's their last move because they don't have any assets. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah. I mean, they've only got so many bites at the apple with these trades. They just recouped, some value here by, they picked up some second round picks and now they've got some young players to trade with Lively and Prosper and Hardy and Green. So,
well, and Regarian in the chat says Valanciunas is not a so-so starting center. I agree with that. It's more of a like, do you want to invest? To me, I read the question as, do you want to invest a lot of resources in the center position? I do, but I want it to be for a guy that makes them better in the playoffs. I think a lot of the people that are being listed raises their floor, but not their ceiling. And that's where like you draft a guy like Lively with the hopes that he eventually raises your ceiling. And that's just the tough part, because I mean, the bigs that are available on the market for a decent price have real drawbacks to them, or they age like bananas left on the countertop. I mean, that's like the Clint Capella fear. That dude has been run into the ground. He's been in the league for 11 years now or whatever. He was an 18-year-old, and I remember him playing in Houston and like had to get in shape. Took him forever. He's a great player. Like I'm not knocking the player at all. It's just I don't think the Mavericks can afford to do any more things like. Does that make sense? Like I think we've
well,
talked about
it's just not the position to invest top tier assets when you've already used the 12th overall pick. Like if they didn't draft Lively, okay, I can you can talk me into it, but they just drafted Lively. Like he's gonna be the guy that you hope is starting at center, for years. So why would you invest resources into a player that's only theoretically going to start two seasons max? It's not worth it for me.
All right, then got a question from Knowles. He says, kind of rhetorical, but how the hell did the Mavs make the Western Conference Finals with Jason Kidd as head coach? I still can't believe it to this day. That's not a rhetorical question. I heard once again on the GOAT podcast, Ben Golliver thinks that Jason Kidd is on the hot seat to start the season. And to kind of address both thoughts at once, Jason Kidd is not on the hot seat. Jason Kidd should be on the hot seat. The best season Jason Kidd ever had was his first one with the Mavericks. Like his win totals over the previous several, his team's only got worse. Now, I think he deserves a shot with this roster, because how they made it to the Western Conference Finals is they found a formula and beat that formula into the ground. And they won a lot of games, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, is it crazy that they then left that series and thought, we need JaVale McGee? Yes.
Right.
But, what are you going to do?
Yeah, we'll see. If to answer how did they make the Western Conference Finals with Jason Kidd, I think part of that is we underestimated how much this team despised Rick Carlisle. Because I feel like half of that season's energy was fueled by just the euphoric feeling of that team not playing under a guy that they apparently just loathed, and took every opportunity to kind of passive aggressively hint at how much they hated him. And how much better off they are. And that happened, when a guy wears out his welcome that first year, that next year can be big. Like what the Warriors the Warriors won a title in Steve Kerr's first year after Mark Jackson, right? Even with Jason Kidd left and Budenholzer in Milwaukee, they won 60 games. Like, not to say Jason Kidd is as good as a coach as Bud or Kerr. I'm not trying to make that comparison. I'm just saying when a voice has worn out its welcome, there's always regardless of who you replace. I think there's always a little bit of an uptick there.
Well, and I think Kidd matters to the like earlier we had the question about Kyrie. I think Jason Kidd matters a ton to Kyrie's buy-in, like just a ton, because he's talked about
sway.
Yeah, and he's talked about how Jason Kidd was one of his favorite players growing up, and like that element of this simply cannot be understated. If you're in for a penny and in for a pound with Kyrie, I think that man, and Luka was also one of the ones who wanted Jason Kidd. Like you just got to figure out a way to make it work. There's things I would really love Jason Kidd to do differently in his coaching. I would like him to take a bullet for his team every once again. I would also like him to be a little more verbose with the refs in the games. But outside of that, they've had assistants come and go. They don't seem to be stuck doing one specific thing. I mean, they could use a little more creativity on offense, but I think that's getting Luka to buy in to a different role more than anything. And if they can't do that, that's not necessarily on them. I mean, it's Luka needing to figure out to be different. So it's like for now, I am tentatively in on Jason Kidd again as head coach. After being pretty awful about him for a long time.
Yeah, well, whether we like him or not, just how this business works, 2022 is going to give him some leeway. Like it's just kind of how it is.
There's also
you have to kind of see it out a little bit more.
So who's the guy? He's also in Australia. The Mavericks didn't sign him to a offer sheet, and then the Blazers retained him.
Thibault.
So there's also like things where it's like the road not taken. Not having a guy like Thibault, I think, aids Kidd a ton. He would have played Thibault a lot.
Yes, he would have.
He just because, and it's like, it's like we used to talk about this with Carlisle all the time. It's like, take away his favorite toys. Stop letting him post up Wesley Matthews, for the love of God. That was why, in hindsight, that trade was really difficult for the Mavs when they basically handed the keys over to Luka, and I'm not sure it was the right thing. But neither was letting Wesley Matthews and Harrison Barnes post up 8 times a game. So,
right. Yeah, I know what you mean. And I think, he's been here 2 years, 1 good year, 1 bad year. I think it's, just in terms of fairness, even if personally I have thoughts about his longevity as a quality coach.
Yeah.
I mean, you just kind of have to kind of roll with it and see how it is.
That's right. All right, the last question, and then we'll BS for a second, is from our Leo, who's there in the chat. He says, who are you and Josh ready to go all in on as your leap guys for next season? Now, it's not like we have a lot of options. It's different than football. It's not like fantasy basketball or baseball or something where you can be like, all right, I'm in on this guy. Like the Mavericks have X number of young guys. Like, is there anybody that you're kind of like, all right, I'm ready for this guy?
Man, that's a tough question to ask with this particular roster.
Think about it. I got mine.
All right, you go first. Let me think about mine.
Where is mine? I'm looking at the roster. I'm losing it. Dante Exum.
Okay.
I'm in on Exum coming in and like working his way into the rotation. A leap for a former lottery guy. Leap might not be the right term, but to go from out of the league to back into the league is tough. Once you exit the league, guys don't come back. They just don't. So I'm fascinated by this.
Yeah, he has all the talent in the world too. Dennis Lindsay guy works with Mavs front office. I think the Mavericks, I don't know if Exum was there, but they have a coach now on the staff that was a Jazz coach last year or the year before. I don't know if he was there when Exum was there. So that's a good take, especially seeing how he plays in the Olympics. I've made mine. It's a little hot takey, so I apologize, but I'm going to go with Mike Miles Jr., a two-way guy.
No, man, people love him.
I really liked his summer league game, and he looked like a better guard than Jaden Hardy in summer league, and that's not necessarily Hardy's fault because, as we've seen, his role in the NBA is better suited for his game than kind of that role that he gets put on him in summer league. Like he is not a give the ball to, clear out, run the offense, do stuff guard. He is clearly a spot up, play off someone else guard, as we saw in his rookie season. And
he looks like a tiny muscle hamster.
Yeah, and Miles looks like he could be a point guard even at his size. So also, crazy, like if the Mavericks are going to make another, like if they feel like they need a third all-star on this team, they're going to have to trade for him. And like it or not, if they're going to make a trade for a third all-star, you would have to assume Josh Green or Jaden Hardy would be in that trade. So there's a part of me that thinks like if there's ever a big trade, whether it's this trade deadline or next summer, maybe Miles is the guy that they feel comfortable sliding into Hardy's role, like vacant role. If he ever does get traded, the Mavericks make like an all-in trade. So that's my guy. I don't know. I think he's going to get a chance. I think there's going to be, between injuries and keeping Kyrie and Luka upright, I think he's going to get like a game or two to play to help the team win a game. And I think I want to see what he does. I'm looking forward to it. I was really impressed. I don't know. It's foolish to be so impressed with summer league minutes, but I just liked what I saw.
There's also the element of you watch a guy and you go, Jason Kidd's gonna like that guy.
Yeah,
There's just ways it's like where people play. They it's where I'm very hopeful about Lively, because Lively doesn't make the mistakes that I would, that he's still got a lot to learn, but it's not like he was doing, woefully out of play kind of thing. It's I'm really interested in what happens this season with guys like some of these back end guys, because we wanted them to change the roster, and boy, did they change the roster. So that's a good question, Leo. Thank you for that. All right. Do we have anything else that we need to hit on?
I don't know. We already talked about JaVale McGee officially waived. He's now the Sacramento Kings.
We don't need to talk about basketball stuff. We can. Is there any other stuff we need to talk about?
I don't know. Give me your Starfield report.
It's the kind of game where if I was a younger man, I would spend a lot of time doing it. Of course, it comes out right before basketball season. It's got the same Bethesda of it all, where it's like you've played this game, but you haven't played this game where
you haven't played it in space though.
Woo! Well, it's like there's one of the things I remember from like Fallout 4 where they had like we had like our director of junk, and it's like the person who was responsible for all of the random things being in all the random buildings and such. There's that, but it's space, and it's like everything so far that I've been to. I know it won't be the case forever because it's partially procedurally generated. It feels like I'm going to like unique places, and that's fascinating to me. It's real big.
I know Mass Effect was like one of your favorite games ever.
Oh, yeah.
So I was just curious how this scratched, if this game scratches that itch at all. I know they're kind of different.
I don't think the story will be as tight. Like Mass Effect 2 is probably like one of my 3 favorite games, but I'm gonna really like this. Like if we had Baldur's Gate on Xbox, you would have lost me already. Like this wouldn't, and it's still coming to Xbox at some point.
Later.
You may still lose me.
Have you seen the third? I mean, I know you've watched 30 Rock. Do you remember the episode where Tracy Jordan is trying to make a porn video game, and he gives it to Frank to try it? And like Frank comes into his dressing room and he's got like a huge beard and he's like, "Oh, it was okay. Like I played it." And he's like, "Frank, you've been gone for 3 months." And he's like, "What?" Like I feel like that's you with Starfield if it came out when you were a younger man.
I mean, I sunk when I got back into video games in 2007 when it was my first year out of college, and I was spending too much money at the bars.
Year to get back into them.
And people will forget this. People don't remember. Like George Bush did a stimulus package where he sent like every person under a certain amount like $500. That like we just got like $500 in the mail, similar to the stuff that he did during COVID. I went and bought my first Xbox using that, absolutely stimulating the economy.
Yes,
and bought Oblivion, which at that point was like 2 to 3 years old, and played like 700 hours of Oblivion. Like, so it's like these games are just tailor made for me. So I'm gonna have a great time with it. I'm trying to figure like we have like, so it's the 5th right now, and I'm glad you kind of addressed this. We're gonna slowly start ramping up, but we still have 6 or 7 weeks until basketball. So it's like I'm trying to like both enjoy myself, but also get back into the work groove, and it's very difficult with all these distractions that I have.
Yeah, we're in that spooky zone because training camp starts September 6th or 26th. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like it still feels as far away, but it's also kind of like right around the corner. And so it's like, how do we balance? Like, we got to get everything done with. Well, it's okay. We got some time. We're in that weird middle zone.
That's right. I will say the last thing I wanted to talk about. I went to a Wings game on Saturday, and it was fun. So it's
You've been before, right? Have you been to that arena before?
Not to that arena. It was great. It was perfect. Like really perfect for the venue.
Isn't it great?
The crowd was great. It was real fun.
So I walked the stage and graduated.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I enjoyed myself. The Wings are an odd team. Like they're super talented, but they have, and I'm not a WNBA guy, but after watching that game and a couple of others, they have 2 stars that don't really mesh. But they are good enough to where they still win a significant number of their games. So
the Mavericks,
I know, right? So it was, but either way, like ticket prices were affordable. Fans were great. It was a great way to spend, 4 hours on a 100-degree day in the middle of summer. Highly recommended. Was my point. So
nice.
All right. Well, I think I'm going to go play Starfield.
Yeah, I was about to say get back into the great beyond or the great frontier.
That's right. All right. So I'll try to be back Friday. I'm really bad about doing some of these. It's tough. Like I do them during my work day, and something like lately, like my boss has just been like asking me for stuff at like 4:30 on a Friday. I'm like, what are we doing? There's a social contract here. It's summer. Stop asking me for stuff.
What time zone is he in?
In the East Coast.
Oh, that's even worse. I was like, if it's West Coast, maybe he gets some grace. But yeah,
I know.
Okay.
All right, Kirk Henderson and Josh Bowe, please subscribe to the show here on YouTube. Subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. Please leave us a review. Leave comments. I do read all of the comments. Also consider, if you want to, send us an email at podmaverickpodcast@gmail.com. I do check that one fairly frequently. I don't know what we'll talk about next. We'll figure out something. Maybe we will discuss Stephen A. Smith's hot takes. Who knows? All right, guys. Thanks so much for hanging out. We will talk to you soon. Go Mavs.